While looking at the data, I noticed an interesting cross-section between resources that were pro or anti-LGBTQ plus people and movement through history. So until the 1970s, far more resources were negative, and then thereafter, they were far more positive. This is because it was only in the late 60s when the LGBTQ plus rights movement really started to take off. So this means that until the 1970s, lots of the resources, when being negative, would focus on criminality, and then after the 1970s, they would often focus on activism and how strides were being taken for LGBTQ plus rights. Now, while it can be positive that there was a focus on activism and uplifting things that showed how progress was being made, both of these focuses do end up having the same problem. Both mean that the media can focus on big events within LGBTQ plus history and ignore the smaller happenings of just LGBTQ plus lifestyles. For example, while I read multiple accounts by students, these accounts would focus more on things that student societies were doing to protest against prejudice rather than focusing on how they really lived their lives. For example, what the gay scene was like in Liverpool or how relationships were changing. And so this means that actually, even though it's a positive focus, it can still mean that small everyday life details get erased. This happens because people would often edit themselves, so talk about what they consider to be the most important parts. For example, the AIDS movement and how they were fighting against that. But it's also because academics who are studying history would have a focus on bigger events. This means that within the data, there can often be gaps in our knowledge in terms of how people lived everyday lives.